Apologize to all of you folks who were expecting probably a nice radio voice, but you're going to be stuck with me, and hopefully it won't be too painful of a process. But we're here this evening to talk about our district grant program for Rotary year 2019 and 2020. And for those of you who want to feverishly take notes, go right ahead. But tomorrow, the slides from this presentation will be in the download section of our website. And also, there's a recording being made of this presentation, which Chris is going to upload to YouTube in our Rotary District 6540 channel. Just to set some background. The Rotary Foundation makes two types of grants. They have global grants, which are for large international projects that require the participation of 2 or more clubs from different places in the world. As I said, the projects are large. Their minimum budget is $30,000, and many of them can run into the hundreds of thousands of dollars in terms of the project size. And actually, the Rotary International Foundation staff supervise those grants. At the district level, however, the district grant program is intended to support projects of a smaller size. Our maximum district grant here in this district is $3,000. It varies district by district, and it's District 6540 Rotarians who are actually supervising the project. Now, what are district grants? Well, this is money from the Rotary Foundation. It's not district funds. It's not from your dues that you pay to either Rotary International or to the district. It comes from the foundation itself. And these are for smaller size projects, as I had said. And they're meant to be completed in a shorter time frame, generally 3 to 6 months. They also, we hope, involve the active participation of the local Rotary Club. As we'll see a little bit later, we don't just want you buying stuff for a local organization, we want you getting your hands dirty. And these projects are things that can be done in conjunction with another organization. If your club wants to partner with the Salvation Army, partner with your church, or another local organization, then it's perfectly within the jurisdiction of the district grant program. Our district grants obviously support the club projects, the grant applications that you will make. That's about $50,000 each year. We also use our district grant funds to provide support for the Interact and Rotaract programs, as well as Early Act. Dollars are used to support the Youth Exchange Program and our Summer Scholars Program, which provides scholarships of up to $7,000 for kids in college who want to spend the summer studying overseas. As I'd mentioned earlier, these dollars are coming from the Rotary Foundation, and it's actually the contributions that you made in your club and the other clubs around the district that were made to the annual programs fund 3 years ago. Of that money that was contributed, 50% comes back to District 6540. And of that 50%, we can use half of it to fund our district grant programs. The other half is made available to support global grants that our clubs want to do, as well as to support the Polio Plus program. And in an average year, we'll have about $75,000 from the foundation available for district grant supported activities. We have a cycle with our district grant program. Right now, we're in the beginning stage of that cycle. Our application window runs from January 1 through March 31. That's why we're holding this webinar in January, to give you some time to before your March 31 deadline. We review applications as they're submitted, and as you might guess, lots of people like to submit applications just before the deadline, so we don't really complete our application reviews until April. We will provide preliminary approval, which is to tell you the level that we have selected to fund your grant and that we're willing to fund the project. But the Rotary Foundation does have final approval. So we have to submit synopses of the projects that you want to do to the Rotary Foundation, and generally in June, they will come back to us with final approval for those projects. We want you to do the projects during the upcoming Rotary year, so you've got from July 1 through the end of May. And we want your final report submitted when you complete the project, but definitely no later than June 30th. And when your final report is submitted, that's when we're going to, and we approve it, that's when we're going to make payment to your club for the district grant amount. And I'll get into some of the details about that a little later. Our application process. Your project must fall under one of the 6 areas of focus for the Rotary Foundation: water and sanitation, health, literacy, peace, disease prevention, and community development. And you'd be hard-pressed not to be able to have a worthwhile project that you want to do that's not going to fall under one of these 6 areas of focus. There are some activities which you cannot do, and I'm going to get into that in just a little bit, but it's important that on our website, you review the grant terms and conditions that we've got posted out there. These are the rules of the road that Rotary Foundation makes for all district and global grants, and it tells you what you can and cannot do. We do have a grants committee which will review your application as it comes in, and will either ask you questions about it or request some revisions, or we'll give it a preliminary okay and say that nothing needs to be changed on this and the application is acceptable as written. Most of the time, we have requests for more money than we're going to have available. So be prepared that we'll come back, and if you'd asked us for $2,000, we may tell you we can only give you $1,500. And in that case, we'll ask you whether or not you can still undertake the project, because that means you're going to have to do more fundraising. And clubs that give more generously to the foundation have a better chance of full funding, since these are foundation dollars. And for the first time this year, we're establishing some eligibility requirements. Some clubs will be ineligible to apply for a district grant based on their level of giving. And I want to get into that and talk about the eligibility. First of all, it's always been the case within our district, if you are not current with your RI or your district dues, you're not going to be eligible. It's one of the things that's part of our application review process. And if we find that your club is delinquent in either one of those areas, we'll get back to you and let you know so that you can work with your club to get current with whatever is in arrears. And because these funds come directly from the Rotary Foundation, as I had said, the foundation giving is playing a role this year to a greater extent than it has in the past. And the new thing that we're doing this year is that any club with a 3-year average giving of less than $50 per capita will not be eligible to apply for district grants. Your president has received a copy of club giving 3-year averages, and you can check with your club president. But I'm going to tell you this evening which clubs are ineligible to apply. We have given a special distinction to RUB, because we know that it takes time to develop the habit of giving to the Rotary Foundation. So any club that's been formed in the last 5 years will be exempt from the average giving requirement, and they can apply for a district grant. At the end of that 5-year period, whatever rules may be in place at the time will apply. And one thing I want to mention to you, there are some districts around the country that require larger participation. Some districts require that the club average $100 per member in order to be eligible to apply for a district grant. Now, I'm not trying to single out these clubs, but I know that you've got question as to whether your club is eligible. Based on the criteria that I just gave you, these are the clubs that will not be eligible to apply for a 2000 district grant. Let's talk about the things you can't do. You cannot purchase land or buildings with district grant dollars. You cannot do any fundraising activities with district grant dollars. You can raise funds on your own that is going to provide the club funding for your district grant, but you can't use grant dollars to actively try and go through that fundraising effort. You cannot use district grant funds for any expenses related to Rotary activities such as conferences, anniversary celebrations, and things like that. And these are spelled out within the guidelines that are available to you on the website. You cannot make what we call unrestricted cash donations to any nonprofit agency. Now, what does unrestricted mean? Well, it means that you write a check to whatever the agency is, and you don't put anything on the memo line that it's for the project. You don't have a letter of support for that. If we see a check that comes in that's not documented in some fashion that it was for the project, we're going to consider that an unrestricted cash donation, and you won't get reimbursed for it. Also, you cannot use grant dollars for any expense that's already been paid. So if you're buying something in April for a project that's supposed to start in July, we're not going to reimburse that. So if your receipts show that you spent money before the beginning of the project, then we're not going to be able to reimburse you. Now, sometimes you have to make a commitment of some kind to another organization before the project begins, but there's nothing wrong with writing a letter of support that you just can't actually spend the dollars before the project's supposed to start. You can't spend more than $500 to say that this was a Rotary-sponsored project. Now, sometimes people get confused. This is referring to what you actually have to pay to get the Rotary logo, and this was supported by the Kendallville Rotary Club or whatever, cannot cost more than $500. We have had some elaborate signage in the past, but this is a hard and fast rule from the Rotary Foundation. If you put up a welcome sign in your town and that sign costs more than $500, we're only talking about the amount of money that it took to put the Rotary logo on that sign, not the entire sign itself. And you cannot use grant dollars for construction where any money can be made. An example of this is we reject district grant applications where you're going to build a concession stand for the local Little League. Cannot do that. And finally, any equipment that is purchased, Rotary cannot own that. Your Rotary Club is going to have to provide that equipment to some other organization for them to have and to maintain. So the equipment cannot remain with your Rotary Club. Well, now let's talk about some of the things you can do. You can use this money for conducting community-wide educational seminars. You can also use it to repair an existing building in a municipality or in some sort of nonprofit situation. We've had district grant money be spent to repair a sidewalk at a local homeless shelter. You can do new construction in municipal parks or public areas. A lot of gazebos have been built with district grant dollars. You can purchase equipment for an organization, and that's just absolutely fine as long as that organization owns the equipment at the end of the project. You can use this money to provide food backpack programs in the local community. You can use it for scholarships, but the payment has to go directly to the school. It cannot go to the individual recipient of the scholarship. As I'd said earlier, you can use this money to put up a new welcome sign in your town. You can also use it for international projects. Every year we'll have district grant funds that are going to be used to sponsor projects in Africa, in Haiti, in Guatemala, etc. It's important that you work on planning your project, and that's part of the whole application process. We want you to get 2 club members committed to the project. And the reason for that is that if you've got only 1 person involved in the project and they leave, now your project is going to be faced with a lot of problems. Also, make sure you plan out the full scope of the activities so you know what is going on with the project and what your potential pitfalls may be as the project goes on. We want you to find a way to get Rotarians involved. Like I said earlier, we want you to get your hands dirty. If you want to buy planters for the town and the city is going to install them on a light post, well, maybe you guys can plant the flowers. Just be creative so that we can have some active involvement of your club members. We also want to get cost and time estimates because that's what the overall application is involved with. What's this project going to cost? What do you want in terms of grant dollars? We want you to coordinate with any other entity that you're going to be working with. And sometimes coordination with municipalities creates its own set of problems. For those of you who've done municipal projects, you know that timeframes change and things happen. But coordination is going to be the important part that you work on. You can also coordinate with other Rotary clubs. We've had situations where 2 Rotary clubs in a community got together and both did district grant applications for the same project, which involved building a basketball court in a local park. We want you to also think about what the publicity is going to be. The Rotary Foundation and District 6540 wants you guys to toot your own horns when you do something absolutely great in the community. And more than just putting a sign on whatever the project is. Also, we want you to have contingency plans, as I had mentioned earlier. If we come back to you and say we can't give you the full amount you requested, can you raise the additional funds that you're going to need? Now I want to spend just a few moments talking about something that sometimes people don't understand a lot about, which is called the Foundation Dinner Awards. Rotary clubs, through their attendance at the annual Foundation Dinner, can earn extra grant money for having greater than 10% of their members attend the dinner. The Foundation Dinner Award is in addition to the maximum $3,000 grant that you can request. We also give it a separate line item on the application, as you'll see in a few moments. Our maximum Foundation Dinner Award this year is $1,500, and the Foundation Dinner Award plus the grant amount that you're asking for cannot be more than 75% of the total project budget. We want your Rotary Club to have some skin in the game, and we put that level as you're raising 25% of the dollars that are going to go to cover the cost of this project. And if you are uncertain as to whether you got a Foundation Dinner Award, you can check with your club president because they've been notified of the dinner awards. Sometimes they don't remember. You can always check with me or with Judy Walker, and we'll let you know what the Foundation Dinner Award is that your club may have received. I think we had about 13 clubs that received Foundation Dinner Awards from their attendance at the last Foundation Dinner. If you've never done a district grant application in this district, you're going to find that it's a pretty simple application. And yes, you can apply for more than one grant. The odds of getting more than one grant funded are kind of limited because most of the time we've got applications for more money than we actually have available. In the application, we want you to describe what the project is, tell us what the needs are in your community or in the community that this project's going to take place in, what needs are being addressed, what area of focus is being addressed, and how your Rotary Club is going to be involved in the delivery of the project, and if you're working with any partners, who they are. We want to know who the two people are that we're going to be using as the primary contacts to keep tabs of this project to make sure that it's operating on time. We also want you to put down what your project budget is. Give us some estimates of what those costs are going to be. You don't have to be extremely detailed, but we do hope that you're accurate in terms of putting down what you anticipate the cost will be. We want to know what your funding sources are, both from money your club's going to raise, your foundation dinner award if you got one, or if there's any funds that are coming in from any outside organizations. And then at the bottom of the page, we want to know who's the person who's going to be responsible for producing the final report at the conclusion of the project. We want your club president to sign the form. We give you a completion checklist so that you can see whether you dotted all the I's and crossed the T's and make our job easier in review. And then I give you what my physical mailing address is, but the best thing with these applications is for you to complete the application, scan it, and email it to me. It makes the process quite frankly, much easier for me. And so it's also a very efficient way of completing the application. This is one of the things that's available on our website. It's a one-page document showing you some of the activities or expenses that are eligible to be reimbursed in district grants and some of the things that are ineligible. We also have on our website the grant terms and conditions that are written by the Rotary Foundation for the administration of district and global grants. And again, this is going to tell you eligible and ineligible expenses. In conducting your project, please remember, don't start before getting final approval and don't start before July 1 because it is a 1920 or a 1919-20 project. And as I'd said earlier, don't spend any money before July 1. And it's very important, since this is a reimbursement, we need to see your receipts. And the one thing that I want to emphasize with you is that an invoice is not a receipt unless it's accompanied by some sort of stamp that says it's been paid, or by a copy of the check that your Rotary Club wrote to pay that invoice. And we really encourage you to try and run as many expenses through the club rather than through individual members. Part of the reason for that is that when you're running it through individual members, you're getting a lot of different kinds of record keeping, a lot of different kinds of receipts, and it's just a smoother process if you can run things through the club rather than have individual members running to Home Depot to pick up lumber or nails or whatever. And please, if something changes with your project, let us know, because that way we can work with you to deal with those things that may change. And if your project goes over budget, can you get more grant money? The simple answer is no, because we will have committed all our grant dollars at the beginning of the process, and we usually do not build contingencies into our grant request from the Rotary Foundation. So what happens if we can't do our project? We know that there are multiple things that can get in the way of the successful completion of a project. We do want projects completed by June 30th. I can't emphasize that more. But we know that municipal timeframes can get changed. We know that key individuals on projects can leave town, be reassigned or whatever. We know that maybe your fundraising didn't meet your expectations. But if you contact us early when you've identified a problem, I pledge to you we'll work with you to try and bring it to some sort of a very workable conclusion where you can, if not complete the entire project, you can complete a portion of it. And if push comes to shove and the worst case scenario arrives and you have to actually cancel your grant, we'll do that and allow you to reapply if it can be worked out so that the project can be done in the next Rotary year. In preparing your final report, we want you to describe what you did. We want you to show how the money was spent, attach copies of the receipts, and just as in the application, having your numbers match, we want that to be the same with the final report. We want you to sign the report and then scan and email it. And it is quite literally a one-page report. And in that report, you're going to tell us what was done, how many people benefited, who those people were, how many Rotarians were involved, what they did, and then you're going to document the sources of income in terms of district grant funds and the funds that the club raised or brought in. And then you're going to show us how that money was spent. And the project income needs to be the same as the total project expenditures. And in a number of situations, what happens is that the club raised $1,000 for the project, but the project came in under budget and they only spent $800. Well, tell us that you just raised $800 so that the expenditures will match the sources of income. If you can, include pictures with your final report. We love sharing with other clubs what's been done with grant money so that people can actually see within the communities how the Rotary Foundation grant dollars were actually spent. In terms of being able to get your grant funds, we operate district grants as a reimbursement, and there's a simple reason for that. If we provide you the money up front, you have to segregate that money from your club finances. So you'd have to open a separate checking or savings account with a local financial institution and keep those dollars totally segregated. So we operate things as a reimbursement to keep things simple for your club. We want you to be timely in preparing the final report. If the project ends in April, don't wait until the middle of June to prepare your final report. Do it when the project ends. We will send the check to the club president or the club secretary. And one thing that's really important from the district's perspective is that Rotary International allows only one district grant year to be open at a time, which means we can't get funds for the current grant year if last year's projects are still open. We can't close that grant year until every project is finished or is canceled. So if your project runs into a problem, you're making your problem our problem, and that's why we want you to be talking with us so that we can work together to minimize that. So how do you get your forms and your info? Well, we're going to be sending packets directly to the club president, so they'll receive an email with all the information that you need to do a district grant. But just in case, Here's where you get it from our district website at rotary6540.org. You scroll down to the homepage, download files, and we'll have all the stuff updated for 2019, 2020 there, where you can click on it and you'll be able to obtain the document. What are some of the common mistakes that clubs make in doing district grants? Well, the first one is the income and the expenses don't match up. It happens every year. Also, just buying equipment for an organization and there's no active participation by the Rotary Club in doing some sort of service in relation to the project. Be creative, find a way that you can actually be out there doing something with your club members rather than just buying a piece of equipment and turning it over. Most frequently, incomplete sets of receipts. We do actually tally up the dollar value of the receipts to see if it matches up to the report. And please remember that the total grant funds can only supply 75% of the project cost. You have to come up with 25% in some way, shape, or form. We also have had clubs that start before July 1. And I don't like telling a club we can't reimburse some expenses because they started too early. And in some instances, we've got some folks, most of the time, if we've got any professional grant writers on this webinar, fight all your instincts to tell us every detail about the project. We want simple applications and simple final reports. Tell us enough to tell us what you want to do and in the final report how it was done, but we don't need 15 pages. And please make your grant request in round dollar amounts. We want to see $950 as the estimate for the project, not $947.65. As it says here, this is an estimate. And please, no handwritten applications or reports. I can't tell you the number of times that even though you think your handwriting or your printing is totally legible, it's not always that case. At this point, I'm going to let Chris read any questions that may have come in through the chat function or unmute your microphones so that you have an opportunity to ask whatever questions you want.
Well, we haven't had any questions come in via chat. I'll go ahead and unmute everyone at this point. So hold on for just a second.
Okay. If we submit an application and it's approved, when will we hear it's approved?
You will get preliminary approval from the district in May, but we have to wait for final approval from Rotary International, and that won't occur until June.
Okay.
They very seldom reject our approvals that we provide. So you'll pretty much know in May if you can undertake your project.
Okay.
Okay, Mike.
Yes.
John Frischie here. You've done an excellent job. This is the best district grant webinar I have participated in I don't know how many years. And I think, I think the key things that you need to have done have been explained clearly. Who should we contact if we have a question?
Oh, I would say contact me. That's the easiest thing. And
Okay.
and in fact, that's a good segue. My contact information is on the screen right now. And John, I appreciate the kind remarks, but I do have to say that your camera has been on the entire time, and I've been watching you drink beer and scratch your chin while I've been trying to do this webinar.
Well, sometimes you just got to do it. But I am who I am, Mike.
I wouldn't change a thing, sir.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, good seminar. I enjoyed it.
Good. Thank you. If there are no other questions, just a final reminder, this stuff is going to be available on the district website and on YouTube. Judy, do you have any parting comments that you would like to make before we close this down?
I don't. I think it was very thoroughly presented, and if they have any questions, they have time to contact you. And the deadline for submitting these is?
The deadline for applications is March 31. Please don't wait until March 28.
Alrighty. Well,
Okay.
with that, everyone, thank you for participating in the webinar.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.